The 2021 NFL Draft saw 5 quarterbacks taken in the first round. In this video, we're going to talk about who's the best of the 4 of them that are currently starters or have been named starters so far this season. We're going to be talking about Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, and of course Mac Jones, who has the best record of the 3. If you guys watched my previous video going through the 2020 quarterbacks in that draft, Joe Burrow, Tua Tagovailoa, and Justin Herbert, you would see that a lot of people have my criticism of my take, where I said Tua was better, and I put him ahead of Herbert. I've since apologized for this, and Herbert is much better than I had first thought, but we're talking about the 2021 quarterbacks today. So, who do I think is better of Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, and Mac Jones? And before I get in this video, it is very early, and don't take this too seriously because these kids haven't finished a full season, and not all of them were named starters at the beginning of the season. And we still don't know what's going to happen with Trey Lance because he was also part of this draft, and you can't leave him out. So, who do I think is better of those 4, the 4 that are playing so far this season? As of right now, a lot of people are going to say Mac Jones, and I'm going to have to agree with them. Mac Jones has been the best so far. He has the best coach. He has the best overall roster. He's on the best team, and therefore he's the best quarterback. Who do I think is going to be the best at the end of their careers? And in my opinion, it's between, I think Mac Jones is probably going to win the most championships because he's with Bill Belichick and has a great team around him. Who's the best quarterback? I'd have to go between Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields. Personally, I don't think Zach Wilson is that good. I think he's gotten a lot of too much attention, too much hype. I don't think he should have been the number 2 overall pick. I would have took Justin Fields in that spot if I was the Jets, or I would have not taken a quarterback and kept Sam Darnold and drafted best available because there's definitely some good talent available, like Micah Parsons, as we're seeing how good he's playing. So I'm between Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields for best overall. These are the 2 more mobile guys. I kind of thought Zach Wilson was going to run a little bit more. He does a good job extending plays. As you're seeing his highlights, he makes a lot of throws from outside the pocket, but he really doesn't take yards downfield. That was a big thing that Trevor Lawrence did at Clemson, that as I watched him, I was like, wow, this kid's really good. He's that good of an arm, that good size, perfect quarterback type, but he's also this mobile and this much of a threat to run, to score points, to run for touchdowns, to extend plays, to on 3rd and 3, he can run, pick up 4 easily, get you a first down. Stuff I haven't really seen from Zach Wilson. Now, I haven't got to see much of them play in the NFL, as I mean, no one really has because we're not that far into their careers. But I haven't seen that from Zach Wilson that I kind of expected from him. You see it all the time from Justin Fields. He's a big running quarterback. That's what I liked about him, is his ability to extend plays. Kind of reminds me of Deshaun Watson, the same way he's going to run to extend plays, and if nothing's there, he's going to run instead of force a ball. He is pass first, but runs a lot, where Deshaun ran a lot and is being insecure. Once his arm got better and he'd be able to figure out defenses and make throws, he became more of a pocket faster. That's what I'm expecting to see from Fields development, so hopefully Matt Nagy in Chicago or whoever they bring in can help develop Fields in that type of way. But I've been really impressed with Trevor Lawrence, how his development goes. Now, the 2 things with these 2 quarterbacks and what's going to determine who ends up being better, because they're both really good talents. That's why they were the top 2 quarterbacks in high school. That's why they're the top 2 quarterbacks in college. And that's why Mac Jones and Zach Wilson, they weren't. They weren't as good coming out as from the beginning from high school as Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence were. And there's reasons behind that. Now, Wilson and Mac Jones both had good college careers, but definitely not as good as Fields and Lawrence. So for me, the difference between who's going to end up being better is how well they're developed between Fields and Lawrence. They're clearly ahead of the other 2, in my opinion, just talent-wise. And the really only questions are coaching. This is something that I think Mac Jones definitely doesn't really have to worry about. Zach Wilson does with Robert Saleh. He's definitely not an offensive guy. But Matt Nagy's supposed to be this offensive genius, and clearly things in Chicago haven't gone great this season. There's always seems to be some issue in Chicago with his coaching. And we all know how the Urban Meyer scenario is going in Jacksonville for Trevor Lawrence. Just hasn't gone great. And this is why I think Trey Lance will end up being pretty good, because he's going to have Kyle Shanahan, and San Francisco already has built a solid defense, and they're just kind of going to turn the keys over to him, and he'll have all these options to play with Kyle Shanahan's run game. We all know how good his run game is. He'll have Raheem Mostert, he'll have Jeff Wilson, he'll have Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle in the passing game. He'll have George Kittle's blocking to help out for run plays. Stuff like that, that's just going to make San Francisco a better team, and I think he'll end up looking kind of how Mac Jones does, where the team's kind of just putting him in spots to win games, and the coaching staff is just telling him to make all the right decisions, and he really doesn't have to do much thinking for himself. That's why I'm not too high on Mac Jones. I really think that he is not doing much there, and it's just Bill Belichick doing things how Bill Belichick wants to do it. I think the reason he got rid of Cam Newton, although Cam Newton has been good, but the reason he got rid of Cam Newton is because Cam Newton wanted to be the guy. Cam Newton wanted to do things on his own. Mac Jones is fine with doing everything how Bill Belichick wants it. Shows up to practice, does what Bill wants in the games, makes the throws that Bill wants, doesn't turn the ball over, which is a great trait, but doesn't turn the ball over, and that's exactly what Bill wants. He'd rather, on a 3rd and 20, Bill would rather you take a 5-yard out route just to move up 5 yards for your punting game than throw a ball 40 yards downfield to receiver, which is something I would find Cam Newton more likely to do, or even Trevor Lawrence, and how he's played so far. So the way Mac Jones has handled games and just always made the least costly decision, or there may not be the least beneficial decision, but he always seems to choose the decision that'll hurt you the least, and that's something you definitely haven't seen from the other three, as they turn the ball over much more than Mac Jones has, and that's definitely something to do with the way Bill Belichick runs his teams, the New England way. Don't turn the ball over. We're going to take care of it. I heard a stat on the radio today. I think it was Matt Kellerman that brought it up that said the Patriots in the last 20 years have had a plus 260 something turnover margin, and that was over 100 better than the second place team, which is just insane. Now they've been really good all these years, so it makes sense for them to do this, but they're just so far ahead of everybody else, and that just comes to coaching. You win the games by having the ball more than your opponent does. You win the game by turning the ball over less than your opponent does, and that's something they've taken care of for 20 years, and it's very impressive, and they've done it so far this year. It's been great to watch, and even when Mac Jones was his first game, I remember watching him against the Dolphins. That game was on television in my area, and he still didn't turn the ball over. Mac Jones didn't throw a pick. They ended up losing that game because of a costly fumble by the running back, but had nothing to do with Mac Jones. Mac Jones played great, put him in the chance to win. They probably end up winning that game, and Miami would be completely done in the playoffs. They would have started the season 0-8, and we wouldn't be talking about the Dolphins making any sort of run. But Mac Jones did a great job in that game. That's the point I'm making there. If we look at stats so far in the season, we see that Trevor Lawrence has thrown for 2,735 yards, 58 completion rating, and he has a total QBR of 32, as does Zach Wilson, who has thrown for 1,741 yards. He's played less games, but his quarterback rating is slightly less at 24, and these guys have been impressive in that regards. Justin Fields, also less games, thrown for 1,585 yards, and has a QBR of 27.3, so he hasn't been much impressive either. However, Mac Jones is thrown for 2,800 yards. He's thrown for the most yards, played every game this season, so he's been available, and his QBR is at 51.7. Now, what I find things interesting is that Trevor Lawrence has 243 rushing yards. Zach Wilson only has 58. Justin Fields has 385, as expected. Mac Jones only has 68. Like I said before, I really expected Zach Wilson to be more mobile, to get more rushing yards, to help out the Jet offense by running downfield. It was something that made me think they're moving on from Sam Darnold, because Sam Darnold is one-dimensional, and they've used Zach Wilson as someone that can be not a primary runner the way Justin Fields could be considered, but a runner enough to where he's a threat and he's going to get yardage. The fact that he doesn't have over 100 yards in the games he's played this season, I find kind of shocking, because he doesn't need to have a lot of rushing yards to get to 100. If you look at his charts, the highest he's rushed for in a single game is 33, and he had a game where he was in the negatives, and he's had a handful of games where he's had no attempts. The most attempts he had in the game was 4, so he's really just not scrambling, not getting outside the pocket. He only has 17 attempted rushes this season, where Trevor Lawrence, a pure pocket passer, people view him as, has 50 attempted runs. Now, I know Trevor's played more games, but it's something I just expected from Zach Wilson. I don't know what other people think, if that's just a me thing, but I really expected that from Zach, just to run more. He does a great job scrambling and finding guys, but the Jets definitely need any yards they can take. So if he were to scramble and get 10 just on a simple scramble, get outside the pocket, the throw's not there, take off with your legs, get some yardage, make your next play easier, or get a first down depending on the situation. So overall question, who is better this season? Obvious answer is Mac Jones. I can't make a debate for really anybody else in that conversation. Mac Jones has better numbers, and his team's winning games, best turnover ratio by far. Who's going to be best in their career? Now, this is a tough question because we don't know what Trey Lance is going to be, because this is technically talking about the 2021 quarterbacks in the draft, not just the 4 that have played this season. So you can't really exclude Trey Lance, and it's going to come down to the coaching staff. If I had to take a bet, I'm gonna bet on Trevor Lawrence. I think they're probably gonna get a new coach in there that'll figure it out. They have a lot of draft picks. I like Caleb on Chasen, although he hasn't been great so far, but we'll see how it goes for them. And that's my opinion. It's gonna be Trevor Lawrence, Mac Jones, and Justin Fields for the best. Trey Lance will be in that conversation, but I think Zach Wilson is a bust.